Okay, so we've got a bunch of stuff to unpack today. Something about steel tariffs and I think a ghost city in China. It's a lot, I know, but stick with us because we're going to tie it all together.
It's amazing how these things can be connected, right?
Totally. And by the end of this deep dive, you'll be able to connect the dots yourself.
You'll be an expert.
Exactly. So we've got this news from Colombia about new tariffs on steel imports, specifically those coming from China. And then there's Jeff Snyder's analysis. He's saying to brace for a harsh winter in the global steel market.
Oh, and we can't forget about that story from Sky News about a whole abandoned city in China apparently built by some company drowning in debt.
And for the bigger picture, we really need to look at what groups like the Latin American Steel Association are saying. That DW article you've got touches on that. Right. So by the end of this, we'll understand why these stories even matter and what's going on in China and how it could even impact you.
It's a wild ride.
You ready to dive in?
Absolutely.
All right, let's start with Colombia. They're getting ready to put these tariffs on certain steel imports, mainly from China. And get this, they're saying this could save something like 50,000 jobs. That's huge for them.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And it's interesting because Colombia's move isn't happening in a vacuum. It's part of this bigger global trend. A lot of countries are worried about China's steel industry and whether it's even fair competition.
So are other countries also putting up tariffs?
Yeah, we're seeing similar actions from other countries in Latin America, Brazil, Chile, Mexico, you name it. Even the U.S. and Europe have had these tariffs in place for years.
Wow, so it's like everyone versus China in the steel market.
In a way, yeah. And this is where that Ghost City story comes in.
Okay, I was wondering how you're going to tie that in.
Oh, it's connected, trust me. It might seem random, but it gets to the core of this whole steel showdown.
Okay, so what's the deal with this ghost city? What happened?
So Sky News did a report on this massive housing development in China. It was supposed to be this luxurious community, but it's totally deserted. Empty buildings, unfinished construction, kind of eerie, actually.
Yeah, it sounds a little creepy.
Yeah, it is a bit unsettling. And it gets to the heart of the issue. This development was a project of Evergrande, one of China's biggest property developers.
I think I've heard of them.
Yeah, they're huge, or at least they were. They went bankrupt, buried under a mountain of debt.
So how does a bankrupt real estate company in China connect to steel tariffs in Colombia?
Well, think about it this way. China's construction boom, which was massive, relied heavily on borrowed money. Imagine getting a loan with an insanely low interest rate to build a skyscraper.
That would be pretty sweet.
Right. Well, that's basically what Chinese developers were dealing with. This easy money fueled a building frenzy and a huge demand for steel.
Makes sense. You need a lot of steel to build skyscrapers.
Exactly. But now with the Evergrande collapse and China's property bubble bursting, that demand for steel has completely fallen apart. So now they're stuck with a ton of steel and nowhere to use it.
So what do? Just hoard it?
Not quite. They've started selling it off at super low prices on the global market, which undercuts other countries that produce steel.
So they're flooding the market with cheap steel.
Basically. Yeah, imagine you're a steel producer in Colombia, and suddenly Chinese steel is being sold for like $500 a ton less than what you're offering.
Ouch. That's gotta hurt.
It does. It makes their own steel way too expensive, and their businesses suffer. That's why Colombia and other countries are putting up those tariffs, to protect their industries and all those jobs from being wiped out by this wave of ultra-cheap Chinese steel.
Yeah, those 50,000 jobs are on the line.
Exactly. It's a tough situation. It's like a chain reaction. China's building bubble bursts,
Yeah.
and the ripples are felt by steelworkers and Colombia construction companies in Brazil, maybe even people buying appliances right here in the U.S.
Wow, so it really is global.
It is. It's the perfect example of how interconnected the global economy really is. And that brings us to Jeff Snyder's analysis and that harsh winter prediction.
Yeah, that got my attention. What does a harsh winter in the global steel market even mean?
Yeah, it's not a great image, is it? It's not just about the steel itself, though. Steel is used in so many products, buildings, cars, appliances, infrastructure, everywhere you look.
Right, it's everywhere.
Exactly. So a harsh winter means we could see a global slowdown in all these areas, construction, manufacturing, any industry that relies on steel.
So what would that look like practically?
Well, it could mean job losses not just in those steel mills, but in all those related sectors too.
And if those industries slow down, it impacts everyone, right?
Precisely. It could mean higher prices for consumers, slower economic growth, maybe even a recession.
So this isn't just a problem for steel companies to deal with?
Nope. This is where those global connections become really clear. When China, an economic powerhouse, goes through a downturn, it creates this domino effect. Snyder specifically mentioned Australia and Brazil as being vulnerable because they're big steel producers who also depend heavily on trade with China.
So they're getting hit from both sides then.
Exactly. It's not looking good.
Okay, so Colombia's taking action with these tariffs, but it sounds like they're not alone. This is a much bigger story playing out in the global steel market.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it brings up some important questions about globalization and its consequences.
Mm.
On the one hand, cheaper goods from China have been great for consumers all over the world.
I mean, who doesn't love a good deal?
Right. But on the other hand, it's created this uneven playing field. Some would say it's been at the expense of other countries.
And it makes those countries overly reliant on one single economic powerhouse. And that takes us back to that DW interview with the director of the Latin American Steel Association. They had an interesting take on why these tariffs are being imposed. So they're saying it's about more than just like getting back at China or whatever.
Right. It's bigger than that. It's
Yeah.
about protecting their own workers and businesses at home. They're trying to make sure everyone's playing by the same rules.
I can see that. It's about fairness.
Exactly. These tariffs are really a defensive move. They're trying to protect themselves from being steamrolled by a flood of cheap steel from China.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Steel tariffs, a housing crisis in China, a potential harsh winter for the global economy. It's a lot to process.
Yeah, it can feel overwhelming.
It does.
Hmm.
So for those of us who don't spend all day thinking about the global economy, what's the takeaway here?
That's the million-dollar question, right? How does all this global stuff actually impact people's lives?
Exactly. What does it mean for me?
Well, one thing to keep an eye on is inflation. Steel is in so many products, and with these tariffs on top of the supply chain issues, we're already seeing prices could keep going up.
So that new TV I've been wanting could get even pricier.
It's possible. And it's not just TVs. It could be anything, cars, appliances, furniture, you name it.
Yikes. Okay, so that's inflation. What else?
Well, these steel skirmishes, as we've been calling them, could create some geopolitical drama too.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's something to watch. Trade tensions can easily escalate and lead to more friction between countries.
So like a domino effect.
Exactly. One thing leads to another, and pretty soon you've got a whole different set of problems.
It's all connected.
Precisely.
Mhm.
And these things are complex. There are always ripple effects.
You did mention something about opportunity, though, earlier. Are there any bright spots in all of this?
That's the thing about disruption. It often creates opportunities. For smart investors, these kinds of shifts in the global market can be really interesting.
So it's not all doom and gloom.
Not at all. There are always opportunities if you know where to look.
Hmm.
The key is to stay informed and understand what's happening in the world. Then you can adapt to make the most of the situation.
That's great advice. So as we wrap up this deep dive into steel, tariffs, ghost cities, and a slowing Chinese economy, I think the biggest takeaway is that it's all connected. What happens on one side of the world can have a real impact on the other.
It's true. We may have focused on steel today, but this story is really a microcosm of how the global economy works.